Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Costain. A new report, Without Nature There Is No Food, from the RSPB's Fair to Nature certification scheme has found that over half of adults want UK farmers to adopt farming practices which preserve and enhance the environment and nature. Mark Varney is the head of Fair to Nature. I asked him to tell me more about the scheme and about where I might expect to find the label.
Fair to Nature, RSPB Fair to Nature is a certification scheme that restores and protects biodiversity on UK farms. We've been established since the mid-late 80s, originally as conservation grade, and the RSPB has run the scheme since 2017. We have a standard that's pretty unique in the sense it covers a wide range of sustainability standards. What's unique about it is we have a requirement that farms cover 10% of the farmed area in quality habitats for nature, and that scientifically shows that that restores and protects biodiversity. We have advisors who support farmers on implementing the standard. It's a specific standard, but not prescriptive, and it gives different choices for farmers that works for them. And we've got a logo, the Fair to Nature logo, which incorporates the RSPB logo. And that's really important because the RSPB logo is known and trusted by people.
What sort of products would I find the Fair to Nature label on? Because it's not one that I see frequently in supermarkets.
Well, we launched the scheme last year with the new logo, and we're very much in the growth stage at the moment. We launched products with a fantastic meat company, Farm Wilder, early in December, and prior to that with Summer Down mint tea, and I'm in extensive conversations with dairy companies, milk companies, cheese companies, a few cider businesses. So the goal is by the middle of next year that the people in their shops will be able to buy milk and bread and cheese, oats, cereals, ciders, possibly some wine, a range of commodities, hopefully some produce as well, some fruit and vegetable, so a wide range of commodities that we can source from the UK. In a snapshot, that what we're really trying to do is to replicate what the fair trade movement achieved for growers and workers in the global south for UK wildlife on farms, getting shoppers to care and think about wildlife when they buy their food, and then link that purchase to changes that are happening on farm.
So one to look out for in the future. One of the headlines from your report was that 56% of adults want UK farmers to adopt farming practices which preserve and enhance the environment and nature. Were you surprised that that figure was so low?
We have stats that suggest that as much as nearly 80% are concerned about biodiversity loss. The 56% was in response to a question where what did we asked what they wanted farmers to prioritize. And that was interesting because 56% said preserving, enhancing nature and wildlife, as opposed to 35% said reduction of greenhouse gases. Preserving a natural water system was just behind biodiversity. And what we think that is that people understand, they can understand and relate to the butterflies, the birds, the bees, the beautiful wildflowers that they may have experienced in the countryside, in the incredible UK farms that we've got. So yeah, it's a really important issue for people around the country, for shoppers, for our farmers and consumers. But the food industry has probably responded a little bit too much around climate and supported farmers to try and address climate change, but not really addressing what are dual crises in nature, biodiversity loss crisis, nature crisis, and a climate crisis.
That would indicate that there's work to do to help the public to recognise that the nature crisis is connected, and that climate and climate mitigation in particular is just one part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The great news is that a lot of the interventions that farmers are already starting to do, many are doing, that are positive for climate mitigation, are actually brilliant for wildlife too. So you think about effective hedgerow management, putting borders around fields, moving away from from simple ryegrass to multi-species herbal lays. All of those things are great for storing carbon, or for herbal lays, reducing reliance on artificial fertilizers. And actually, a lot of those things are also very good for climate change adaptation. We've got some fantastic farming partners who are incorporating agroforestry into their programs, and that's both good for wildlife, but it also helps mitigate climate change in terms of sequestration and supports adaptation in terms of preventing runoff. You know, some of the dairy farmers I've talked to have said they got that because they want to provide shelter for their cattle as we get hotter summers. So yes, there's a great overlap between climate and nature, but we do need people to understand about the biodiversity crisis that exists. We've lost 50% of our hedgerows, 50% of our farmland birds, 64% of our flying insects since the war. So there is a serious issue, but that's not down to farmers. And I say that as a non-farmer, but I work with a lot of farmers. That's down to the policies that we've put in place as a society and the expectations we've got around sort of cheap food, and farmers have responded.
Now, clearly, many of the farmers that you're working with are working to deliver multiple outcomes across their entire farm. But one of the concerns I had with the report was the statement, and you referred to this already, that nature could be protected and restored if all farmers made 10% of their land available for nature. So the question is, what happens to the other 90%? Because as discussed, to address the nature crisis, we need all farming and food production to be on a multi-outcome agroecological basis.
Well, in effect, that's what the 10% habitats means. It's quality habitats incorporated within a farm. So that can include things like wildflower strips around farms. It can obviously include effective hedgerow management, water features. Often that includes within field plots, but bird plots, lapwing plots that are kept fallow. Our farm on our Hope Farm, which is an RSPB farm, we have some sacrificial crops within the we have sacrificial crops within an arable to actually encourage some of the beneficial insects, which are great for birds, but also reduce the requirement to use pesticides. So I would say we're encouraging more farms to be agroecological in their approach by incorporating that 10%. Now, a couple of farmers have talked to me. This is farmers talking to me about thinking about the whole farm as a factory, and you've got the production facility, which is the machinery and the center of the field, but you need the water and the electricity and the plumbing, and that's what the borders and the wildflower strips and the water features are doing. It's providing the support services to farm productively, and that's what farmers have said to me. And I think it's that what we're trying to get to society, get people to understand. Hence the title of the report is "Without nature, there is no food," and a lot of those habitats support the pollinators that are essential for our berries, for our apples, for our pears, for our cider, for our wine. And the beneficial insects use those habitats as well.
I take the point about 10% of specific habitat creation, but many farmers would say that the most important habitat on any farm is the soil, that is the building block of biodiversity, and that without it fully cycling nutrients and water, you won't get the benefits cascading upwards and outwards across the rest of the farm. So the focus on 10% surely implies that we can carry on with business as usual elsewhere.
No, I mean, effective soil management is an important part of the standard. I suppose part of the reason that we focus on the habitat is that that's what we're bringing as the largest wildlife charity in Europe with over 130 years of experience of advising on habitats and supporting wildlife. That's our expertise, and the science says that is necessary as well as effective soil management. I think the other thing is that there is science to support the fact if farmers don't want to go down a regenerative soil management approach, they want to carry on maybe ploughing, and then having good habitats around the farm will provide important for wildlife to thrive. So I think what we're trying to do with nature, with Fair to Nature, is make a program that's available for a whole scope of farmers, small, large, organic, conventional, regenerative. If they put those habitats in place, it's positive for nature. But yeah, you're right. Having the good, effective soil management is critical.
In the report, there's recognition that customers don't always know the difference between terms like regenerative or nature-friendly farming. But often the bigger challenge is that it's hard to find a nature-friendly product at all in particular product ranges. Which food sectors do you think present the biggest challenge for customers?
Well, I think you're right. There's not an awful lot of nature-friendly products out there, and it's absolutely our mission to change that. As I say, and I wouldn't pick up on any one particular category. I think our goal is that we dramatically increase the amount of nature-friendly products that are available for shoppers.
And just finally, are there any other key findings from the report that you'd like to share?
Yeah, we go into some detail about what the importance to customers, to shoppers. There's further detail about the scale of risk, actually, and we've got to be careful about using too much inflammatory language. But I've talked to the scientists at RSPB and said, let's put some numbers on how big an issue loss of biodiversity is to us in farming. And they say to me, it's a very, very complex issue. We can't just have a simple linear. We're going to, for example, in climate change, we're on a 4-degree trajectory, and we need to get a 1.5-degree trajectory. And there's some interesting quotes from people from the CEO of Tesco and chairman of John Lewis, who are highlighting this is a risk that we need to think about. And actually, probably our recommendation in the report is take a bit more of a precautionary principle. The thing I would mention is, and this is very much an English UK government focus, that the agricultural transition plan the government announced a couple of years ago, there are some gaps in terms of an overall plan, but there is increased funding available for farmers to put in things like the wildflower strips and leaving some parts of the fields fallow, and that is really, really positive for wildlife, but it's also increased funding available for farmers. And the UK government have made an intention to get to 500,000 hectares of habitat managed well for land managed well for nature, which we think is a good target.
That was Mark Varney from Fair to Nature. More news on our website, 8point9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.